Hey kids, what do you think of when you hear the words video game movie? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a bummer that for some reason video game-based movies have a way of sucking. It's a reputation well earned. They're often poorly managed and the source material blatantly ignored. So to me, I find it funny that the solution to making a good video game movie is not to base it on a pre-existing video game, but instead make up a game for the movie to use as its premise. That's how we got Disney's 50-second animated film, Wreck-It Ralph. Now then, the best way to describe Wreck-It Ralph is that it pulls a Pixar. Now, according to a meme that's circling the internet, the basic breakdown for any Pixar movie works on the simple question of what if. For example, what if toys had feelings? What if dinosaurs had feelings? What if fish had feelings? What if superheroes had feelings? And then the most amusing one, what if feelings had feelings? So, Wreck-It Ralph asks, what if video games had feelings? Wreck-It Ralph actually comes off sharing a lot of qualities that Pixar has. There's an emphasis on story and character-driven material, as opposed to the more musical renditions of past Disney movies.
Let it go, let it go.
Boo! Boo! Bow down to her if you want. Boo! Boo!
Wreck-It Ralph is also the movie debut of director Rich Moore. Rich Moore has cut his teeth working on shows like The Simpsons and Futurama, Dude Gets Animation and Humor, and he's even done his second film for Disney, which was Zootopia, which also shares a lot of the same themes as Wreck-It Ralph. So Rich Moore managed to come up with a video game movie that honestly feels like a labor of love, and not a labor of exploitation like most video game movies. Yeah, that there himself is the king jackass of video game movies, Uwe Boll. If you have no idea who this guy is, look him up on YouTube. He's a jackass. Now, some people might be asking why I'm reviewing this movie. Well, this is really a response to my Frozen review, which if you haven't seen it, feel free to give it a go. That's a shameless plug, I'll admit it, but I worked on the video and wanted to get views. With Frozen, I did a pretty deep analysis of the film. And with this review, it's going to be a companion piece. It was actually inspired during post-production because I noticed similarities between the movies. Not just in themes and tones, but also people who worked on the film. And then it got me to think, so did Wreck-It Ralph just do everything Frozen did, but better? And that's why it's here now. This is going to be a cross-analysis between Frozen and Wreck-It Ralph. So it's going to be the Queen of the Cold versus the Red-Clad Wrecker. Let's get this review started. Have you ever seen that Looney Tunes short, A Sheep in the Deep? The whole premise is pretty simple. Characters punch in and out as if they're performing a day job of being a wolf and a sheepdog. Well, Wreck-It Ralph sort of follows that basic premise. In the movie, arcade game characters are alive, so they do jobs basically. They're the jobs of whatever role they're coded for. In the case of Ralph, he is a villain for his game, Fix-It Felix Jr. So on a daily basis, Ralph has to climb up a building, bash it up, and it's up to Felix and the player to stop him. What's interesting to note is that the movie does more than just make video game references to ride on nostalgia. So yeah, Wreck-It Ralph actually does do a surprisingly a bit more depth than I thought it would. This kind of shocked me. It addresses themes of discrimination and prejudice, using the concept of Ralph being a bad guy as an allegory for being profiled and derided by his fellow game icons, and it's played well for both dramatic effect and to some extent even comical effect.
Step aside, sir. Random security check.
Random, my behind. You always stop me.
I'm just a surge protector doing my job, sir.
So after doing his job and dealing with the scrutiny of being a bad guy for 30 years, Ralph sets out to be a hero and travels across the arcade, spanning a multiverse. As in the arcade, each game world is its own enclosed universe with its own law and order. Now, for Ralph to be considered a hero like Felix, he sets out to win a medal in order to prove himself to the residents of the Fix-It Felix universe in hopes it will somehow better his life. life. Of course, calamity ensues, and what starts as a simple hero's journey ends up as a chaotic battle to save the multiverse from utter destruction. On a narrative level, Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen actually do follow a very similar basis. You have a lead character leave their home to go on a personal journey, this being Ralph to Elsa. Then it's up to a pair of characters to find them and bring them home, this being Felix and Calhoun to Anna and Kristoff. Hell, the pairs in both movies even shack up at the end of each film. Because, you know, when it comes to Disney, boys and girls just being friends is an alien concept. There needs to be romance. I mean, you can't have two completely different genders be friends. Oh wait, they did that in Zootopia and it worked out fine. Anyways, this is where it diverges into how Ralph actually did the narrative better than Frozen. See, using the rule of empathy, it's established early on that Ralph is actually a pretty nice guy. He goes to therapy sessions with fellow bad guys to get a better understanding of his life, and he even donates food to out-of-order games like Q*bert. So now when I see people discriminate against Ralph, I can empathize with him because this is a relatable situation. For a lot of people, including myself, dealing with discrimination is a part of life, even if it's over something minute. For me, I had to take special ed courses because I was slow in some subjects. And because of that, because of this experience, I can relate to this character easily. Now, in the case of Elsa, her rule of empathy situation felt less natural and more manipulative. See, with Ralph, I get to see he's a good guy, but everyone doesn't trust him because of his role of being a bad guy. With Elsa, I get that Elsa's a nice person, but people's fear of her is justified in the context of the story. Because think about it, if you're a citizen of Arendelle, and one day the shut-in of the royal family, who's been gone for years might I add, shows up and then has a spastic ice fit that results in freezing your home, causing near starvation and hypothermia to set in, you being terrified is actually justified because you know nothing about her other than she showed up and screwed everything up for everybody. This is why, to me, Ralph works more and Elsa doesn't. To me, Ralph did a better job establishing him as a victim of the situation he's in. You see where he's at in life, and it sucks. Because he is a nice guy, but no one else is seeing it. With Frozen, they try and do it, but it's not nearly as impactful. Because instead of seeing Elsa interact with all the people of the kingdom, she holds herself off away from everybody, so there isn't much character interaction or depth being designed. And then when she shows up, bam! Frozen. Bam! Run away from home. Bam! Make no effort to fix it. Bam! Never even choosing to come back home afterwards and has to be dragged back in order for her to come back to Arendelle. At least Ralph tries to take control of his life, which we will get into more in the character section. When it comes to Wreck-It Ralph, there are quite a few characters. I'll dive into the main ones, of course, but I want to first give credit to the characters that make up this movie's universe. Not only does this movie boast a remarkable amount of 188 individual character models, but on top of that, the work they needed to get so many licensed characters is astonishing. They could have very well have just flooded the background with generic parodies and pastiches to fill it out. And sure, while the main characters, Felix and Ralph, are paying homage to Mario and Donkey Kong, as an artist and a fan of video games, I really respect this level of commitment, and being able to see all these game characters meeting up is kind of awe-inspiring. It's impressive that creator Rich Moore has said how he wanted there to be an authentic approach and that it had to have real characters from real games. Now, while a lot of these cameos fill out the background, I do want to give credit to the ones that stand out. Q*bert is used extremely well here. He gets to show Ralph's compassion for others. Having Ralph see Q*bert and his friends being homeless and then giving them a cherry from Pac-Man to help them out shows perfectly how compassionate and loving and considerate Ralph is as a character. Hell, Ralph even gives Q*bert and his friends work on the bonus stage of his own game at the end of the movie. Next up is the bartender Tapper from the game of the same name, played by Futurama alumni Maurice LaMarche. Tapper is interesting in that, while it is a small role, he seems to be one of the few friends Ralph actually has outside of the Bad Anon meetings. Ralph even shows a degree of admiration and respect for Tapper, hinting at a long-standing friendship.
I've never been more serious about anything in my life. That's why I came straight here, Tapper. You've never given me a bum steer. Now, come on. Where can a guy like me go and win a medal?
I don't think such a game exists, Ralph.
It's funny, this is small, but it feels huge to me because it's character building, you know, it's developing something. It implies that Ralph has regularly hung out at this bar for 30 years, and Tapper has become his close friend because of it. Even Felix hasn't become friends with Ralph by this point, and they've been in the same universe for 30 years together. Then finally, my favorite of the game cameos, it's the Red Cyclone, Zangief, from Street Fighter, voiced by the film's director, Rich Moore. Major kudos for pulling off the Russian accent. That could have sounded terrible. Zangief sounds freaking awesome, and it's just so lovable in this movie. To me, this character, though, establishes a major theme with his advice to Ralph.
Then I have moment of clarity. If Zangief is good guy, who'll crush man's skull like sparrow's egg between thighs? And I say, Zangief, you are bad guy. But this does not mean you're bad guy.
Zangief managed to find acceptance in being a bad guy, which really is the main theme for Ralph's journey, and that's accepting who he is. And in a lot of ways, it's something I'd like to think we all go through. We see the flaws in us, and we then learn to accept it instead of detesting it. It's a part of who we are. So the major theme of Ralph's journey isn't so much to prove he's a good guy to a bunch of rich dinks from Fix-It Felix Jr. It's actually a journey of acceptance into who he is. And speaking of Ralph, hailing from the platform high-rise apartment of Fix-It Felix Jr. is the Red Wrecker, Wreck-It Ralph, played by John C. Reilly. I mentioned before that Ralph and Elsa share some similarities, such as both being isolated by society and dealing with discrimination. The major difference between the two simply comes down to that Ralph actually does something about it. Ralph finds himself in a crummy place in his life, he lives in the garbage, the Nicelanders and Felix don't even realize how integral he is to their game, and others in the arcade are instantly dismissive of him just because he plays the role of a bad guy. For 30 years, Ralph has been dealing with this, so I honestly felt an instant connection with him from simply one line of dialogue.
It's just, I gotta say, it becomes kind of hard to love your job when no one seems to like you for doing it.
Now, at the time when I first saw Wreck-It Ralph, I was going through a crummy place in my life. My review show still wasn't as successful as I'd like it to have been, and the comments I had gotten were often cruel, making it hard to want to continue this line of entertainment. With Ralph, I see a lot of myself in him, quite honestly. I have a temper, but I have a good heart. Sometimes my temper's there to cover up the fact that I'm hurting. This honestly makes Ralph more like a real person, and that's the key to storytelling. It isn't necessarily the plot that needs to be great. He feels like a real person with issues we can relate to. Now, in contrast, there's Elsa. Simply put, Elsa's just undefined. She didn't make any choices to train herself in controlling her abilities, even though the trolls said that she should, and Elsa was there when the trolls said that. Elsa doesn't choose to leave her room when her parents die. She just stays in there, so I guess her choice is she hides, and that's it. She didn't even choose to tell her sister the truth, either that she accidentally hurt her as a little kid, or the fact that their parents erased her mind. Ralph took charge of his life. He was in a bad place, and he made an effort to change it. Elsa went from her bedroom to a castle to being loved by everybody without any form of personal growth, whereas Ralph made peace with Felix and the Nicelanders. Now, I do think, however, this could have been handled better. I felt like the Nicelanders really didn't learn jack from this experience. If anything, the Nicelanders kind of come off that they're scared and paranoid that they'll go out of order if Ralph tries to pull this crap again. So they just sort of fake being nice to him. Now, I really think there should have been a scene in the movie that has Ralph being acknowledged for his importance, that he is integral to their game, because without him being the antagonizing force, the game actually doesn't exist. But instead I got this.
Gene, wait. Listen, this is not what I wanted.
Well, what did you want, Ralph?
I don't know, I was just tired of living alone in the garbage.
Well, now you can live alone in the penthouse.
They treat him like crap the entire time. So Ralph left, and in the single moment that it somehow disrupts their perfect little lives, they can't seem to realize what's Ralph's problem. It's not rocket science. Stop being a dick. But at least Ralph addresses his issues to the Nicelanders and even gets some degree of closure. It's minimalistic, but it's mild. They give him a cake, so it's something. Elsa, on the other hand, chokes out an entire kingdom and everybody welcomes her back with open arms. You know what, though? Sure, the Nicelanders and the bit with Felix's growth is a bit on the weak side. It's arguably one of the weaker parts of the whole movie. But you know what's strong? Ralph's growth and connection to his gutter snipe sidekick.
Turns out I don't need a medal to tell me I'm a good guy. Because if that little kid likes me, how bad can I be?
Coming around the track from the racing game Sugar Rush in the land of diabetes, Vanellope von Schweetz, played by Sarah Silverman. Vanellope is an interesting piece of work. I remember seeing the trailers for Wreck-It Ralph and was just thinking to myself, a movie with John C. Reilly, Jane Lynch, and Sarah Silverman. Well, I guess if they were all lined up for a one-way trip to the slaughterhouse, it wouldn't be so bad. Then I watch the movie, and if there's one thing I love is when I can be proven wrong about a movie. Honestly, most of the times I can just watch the trailer and be like, yeah, that movie's gonna bomb. Though I gotta say, I was surprised at just how enjoyable Vanellope is. Seeing that she's a kid, you would think that only the worst could come of this.
Are you an angel?
Yet not only does Vanellope work for comedy, but she's also relatable for drama. One thing the movie does really well is showing discrimination from both the adult and child's perspective. As we all know, kids can be cruel little dicks from time to time, and often kids will deal with bullying. And Vanellope deals with some cruel bullies. They break her cart, rag on her for being a glitch, and say how she should have never have been born. It's some pretty harsh stuff. Worse off, since she is a glitch, Vanellope can't just leave her game. So she's trapped in her own personal hell where everyone hates her for being different, and she just has to deal with it. And in a sad way, that's a fitting metaphor for real life. This allowed me to empathize with Vanellope quickly, and the parallels to Ralph work out really well too. Another good thing about this movie is that it's not just Ralph's story, it's Vanellope's story too. Both are outcasts. Both are scrutinized in their respective worlds. Ralph sees Vanellope being mistreated, just like he was. She lives in the garbage, just like he does. Ralph can see himself in Vanellope and begins to bond with her. Now sure, at first it's for selfish reasons. Ralph wants to use her to get a medal, but it evolves past that because the characters get to grow. It soon becomes that Ralph is helping someone get a better life than what he has. Honestly, I'm surprised. I would have thought Vanellope would have just been the comic relief character, you know, like Olaf, needing to fit that criteria of something cute for marketability. But Vanellope is actually well-rounded. She has charm of being a sweet kid, but also the flaws of being a bit rude. But not to the point where you want to like go back in time and like shove her pregnant mom down a flight of stairs. Vanellope feels unwanted, alone, she has no friends, and honestly, I think plenty of us can relate to that. She has her struggles, but she has her charm, and that makes her enjoyable. Then there's also the case of her glitching, and I gotta bring this up because this is basically her frozen curse. Vanellope tends to glitch out a bit during moments of stress, and you know what? She learns to own it.
You gotta get that glitch under control, kid.
Sure, it's not like she has a montage where she learns to master it or something, but Vanellope does learn to control it, albeit abruptly in the third act. Point is, she does learn to control it, she makes a conscious effort. Elsa had one song where she seems to master her abilities, and then after that the writers just said, screw it, and she couldn't turn off the storm she started. Lazy Snow Skank was asked twice to do that, and both times she doesn't even attempt it, despite how dire it is.
You kind of set off an eternal winter everywhere.
Everywhere?
Well, it's okay, you can just unfreeze it.
No, I can't. I don't know how.
If you would just stop the winter, bring back summer, please.
Don't you see? I can't.
You know who does try to use her powers though when it's dire? Vanellope. She sees Ralph in danger, and she goes risking her own life to save him with the power she really doesn't have full control over. But you know what? At least she tried. She made a conscious effort. As opposed to the Frost Floozy over here, who doesn't make any effort to learn to control these abilities. She just has a song, and then she controls them, and then she doesn't. So at least credit to the writers on the movie, because you know what? At least Vanellope has a conscious effort made, and it shows that you can take something that makes you different, and you learn to own it.
Yes, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win.
Top shelf.
Top shelf.
The protagonist from the high-rise apartment platformer Fix-It Felix Jr., played by Jack McBrayer. Fix-It Felix Jr. is a hilarious character. As the lead character of his own game, he's basically the center of his own universe, where the players take control of him to fix the messes caused by Ralph. And that is pretty much true for the narrative of the movie, since after Ralph game jumps into Hero's Duty, he accidentally lets loose a Psybug that in turn infests the next game Ralph crashes into, Sugar Rush. So Felix goes to retrieve Ralph and bring him back to save his own game, and eventually teams up with Sergeant Calhoun, the lead tutorial character of Hero's Duty, played by Jane Lynch. She's also a very fun character, tough as nails and dedicated to fighting monsters. An overall really nice change of pace from the Princess Spunk Disney pukes up so often.
Here I stand in the light of day.
Earlier I had said that Felix and Calhoun share similarities to Kristoff and Anna. See, in Frozen, when Elsa goes missing, it's up to Anna and Kristoff to go find Elsa. And here, when Ralph goes missing, it's up to Felix and Calhoun to go find Ralph. Now, while Kristoff was brought in to help Anna with the most noblest of intentions, she pretty much just bribed him, Calhoun teams up with Felix to find and exterminate the Psybug that escaped so nobody's in danger. Calhoun wants to keep everybody safe from a Psybug infestation, and Felix wants to rescue his world from being destroyed, as without Ralph, Ralph, his universe is broken. On top of that, the other difference is the romance between Calhoun and Felix is much more organic. Where in Frozen, Anna and Kristoff's love had no chemistry during the majority of the film, and then they spontaneously are in love to appease the princess reward mentality of, you get rewarded for your hardships. Now, that's not to say the relationship with Calhoun and Felix is perfect. They establish early on that Calhoun has a tragic backstory about losing her former lover on their wedding night. Humorously, the berserk button for her PTSD is the phrase her lover used to use for her as a pet name.
You are one dynamite gal.
Wow. You are one dynamite gal. One dynamite gal. Dynamite gal. Dynamite gal. Dynamite.
Get out!
All I said is you're a dynamite gal.
I said get out!
Calhoun doesn't ever explain to Felix what's wrong. She doesn't say she's concerned for his well-being or that she's afraid he could die. As the movie says, if you die outside your game, you are dead for good. Instead, Calhoun just drops Felix off. Even though she knows there's a cybug on the loose, and that doesn't really make sense considering the love subplot. I mean, maybe it could be written off as a moment of spontaneous anger. I mean, we've all been in that situation, right? We get angry, we do or say something stupid, and then we feel guilty about it. But that's just it. This is never picked up on again. It's never addressed. She just leaves Felix on his own. He could have easily just run into the cybug and then gotten himself killed. You can call it a nitpick, but it seems just really abrupt that Calhoun would just leave him, especially since earlier on, Calhoun shows genuine concern for Felix's well-being.
Wait, ma'am, I'm going with you.
Like fun you are, short stack. You die outside your game, you don't regenerate.
Now, on the other hand, we got Felix, who frankly doesn't have an arc. I mean, okay, Felix kind of does, but it's really minimalistic. And an arc is not entirely needed for a character to be enjoyable. Sometimes a narrative doesn't need the character to go through an arc, but rather a goal to achieve. But when it comes to Felix, it seems that he should be realizing the importance of Ralph, but it's vaguely touched on at best. For one, when Ralph shows up for the 30th anniversary celebration of their game, because no one invited him, Felix just half-heartedly invites Ralph inside and just stands by the sidelines as Ralph is being derided by Gene, one of the Nicelanders.
You see, Ralph, there's no room for you up here.
Well, what about this? We can make room. Here, we can take turns. Easy.
How about we just eat the cake?
To me, Felix is too uncompassionate to Ralph's situation. Hell, when Ralph comes up to him and asks him for help after breaking Felix out of jail because Felix got captured, Felix is still kind of a jackass.
And then, I met the most dynamite gal. Oh, she gives me the honey glow, something awful. But she rebuffed my affections. And then, I got thrown in jail.
Felix, pull yourself together.
No, Ralph, you don't know what it's like to be rejected and treated like a criminal.
Yes, I do. That's every day of my life.
Seriously, for 30 years, Ralph has been thrown off a building, into mud, is living in the garbage. Felix has one bad day of what it feels like to be Ralph, and he's acting like a little bitch. I mean, it makes some sense he would act this way. In his world, basically, he's living in utopia. Everybody freaking loves him. I'm sure it wasn't the writer's intent for Felix to come off as apathetic to Ralph. And for what it's worth, Felix does show a vague amount of compassion for Ralph as the movie progresses.
I'm looking for my colleague, Wreck-It Ralph.
Have you seen my friend Ralph?
Ralph, you coming, brother?
See, that's a bit too subtle for my taste. With Felix just changing his words for Ralph, it's not enough. It is development, but it's just not enough for me. I would have rather had Felix clearly admit that he and the Nicelanders were in the wrong, that Ralph is important to their game, and that they're gonna work harder to treat him better. As the movie frames it though, Ralph is predominantly to blame and atone for his mistakes, while Felix and the Nicelanders aren't shown to have much at fault here. That being said, Calhoun and Felix are solid characters. They're very enjoyable, but they could use some minor fine-tuning to round them off a bit better.
All right, enough with the goo-goo eyes. We've got work to do. Let's go.
The sovereign of sweets in the land of Sugar Rush, and surprisingly the villain of the movie, King Candy, played by Alan Tudyk. Seriously, I watched multiple trailers for this review because I could have swore there was almost no mention of King Candy in any of the trailers. He isn't even on the box art. He's not on the front, he's not on the back, or he's not even in the screenshots below over here. He's not anywhere. Even Hans made it on the cover of Frozen, and his villain twist was in like the last 20 minutes. I mean, even King Candy's appearance in those trailers are not only minimal, but they use the same scenes with him for every trailer. So when this movie came out, I didn't even consider the chance of there being a villain. It seemed like the movie was going to, at best, be one where the hero causes a problem and then needs to clean up their own mess. But no, we got a villain, and King Candy is a glorious one. What's interesting here is that unlike many Disney villains of the past, King Candy isn't the obvious bad guy. See, Disney has this bizarre penchant that when a villain appears in their movie, they need to be visually obvious that this is the bad guy so that everyone watching knows. It's as if they think we're all idiots. And I know, they're made with kids in mind, and I get that. But come on, I'll give Frozen credit on that. At least Hans didn't look evil. He was designed to look charming to subvert the trope. But here I was surprised that the way they handled this villain is fantastic. First off, King Candy has a wonderful personality. They basically just got Alan Tudyk to channel the soul of the Mad Hatter. The good Mad Hatter.
What a small world this is.
There you go. So right off the bat, King Candy's just unbelievably funny, which is great because a Disney villain should be amusing to watch. Now, that isn't to say that they all need to be funny. Judge Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame wasn't really funny. He was certainly scarier than most Disney villains, and that's fine. Long John Silver from Treasure Planet was actually rather charming and fatherly throughout the majority of his film. I think the key here to make the enjoyable Disney villain the key component of it all is that Disney villains need to have a sense of wit, a sense of humor, and a dark edge to them. Now, Hans and Candy actually do share similarities. They are both played off for one as eccentric gentlemen. Hans is as goofy as Anna, and Candy is played off as delightfully insane, again, like the Mad Hatter. The difference is that there's a build-up to Candy as opposed to Hans. At the beginning, Candy is shown to not want Vanellope to race, and we believe it's because she is a glitch. And that makes sense, because we see that everybody doesn't like her because she's a glitch. Then we see later that Vanellope's code is stranded in cyberspace, and with her being a glitch, that actually makes sense because you think about it, oh, she must be an unfinished character, unconnected with the main game. So that's fine, you don't really think about it after that. And then you start to hear these stories from other game characters about a guy named Turbo.
You're not going turbo, are you?
You game jumped? Ralph, you're not going turbo, are you? But I never thought he'd go turbo.
As the stories unfold, we learn that Turbo was once a popular racing game character until another racing game shows up in the arcade and stole the spotlight. So to reclaim his popularity, Turbo tries to invade the other game, costing it its existence, and Turbo's own game gets shut down because he ditched it. So the character then becomes a ghost, a cautionary tale that's used to scare other games into sticking to their programming. After learning about Turbo, we get scenes where King Candy actually shows his compassionate side. He comes to Ralph and explains why Vanellope can't race, that if the players see her glitching, it could cause Sugar Rush to get unplugged, and that's a legitimate fear. It could destroy that world, and it could kill Vanellope.
And when they see her glitching and then you twitching and just being herself, they'll think our game is broken. We'll be put out of order for good. All my subjects will be homeless. But there's one who cannot escape because she's a glitch. When the game's plug is pulled, she'll die with it.
Seriously, this was a great point in the movie. It shows King Candy in a noble light. It shows him as being kind and compassionate and teaching a valuable lesson to Ralph that being the good guy means making the tough decisions, which does come to play later in the movie. It felt genuine, it felt sincere. Then, when it's revealed what King Candy did, that he hacked the code, that he tore Vanellope out of this universe, and he manipulated everyone's memories to idolize him, you look back at the other scenes now and then realize just how much of a monster he is. Then during the climax of the movie, it's revealed that not only is King Candy homicidally insane—
No way!
What the? Who are you?
I'm Turbo, the greatest racer ever!
he's Turbo. He's the character that everybody keeps mentioning who game hopped, which is cool because he's just written off. There's even like a little background reference of like a wanted poster of him, and that's it. It's such clever little bits of foreshadowing, but it gets even better because he becomes even more insane. He gets eaten by a cybug, and cybugs become what they eat. But because cybugs are like these big, dumb animals, I guess a sentient mind, when consumed, can take over the body. And then we get this fucking thing.
Because of you, Ralph, I'm now the most powerful virus in the arcade. I can take over any game I want. I should thank you, but it'd be more fun to kill you. Get back here, little guy!
And this somehow makes him only more psychotic.
Vanellope! Oh, look at that, it's your little friend. Let's watch her die together, shall we?
It was so nice to see a Disney villain that's just insane. It's like having the Joker in a Disney movie. And I forgot that Turbo was a part of this movie. I thought he was a cautionary tale. It was like background dressing. He's there to build the mythos of this world, and that's it. And then he actually shows up, and that took me by surprise. What really got me to love King Candy, though, is the fact that I was tricked. Disney villains tend to be obvious, they tend to be one note, and Candy wasn't obvious or one note. He was goofy and kindly and at times wise in his words like a mentor, and then the big reveal is that he's actually a master manipulator. King Candy getting Ralph to do what he wanted and getting Ralph to destroy Vanellope's cart just so she wouldn't race is proof enough of how much of a good bad guy King Candy is.
And if I ever see you here again, Wreck-It Ralph, I'll lock you in my fungeon.
Fungeon?
Fun dungeon. You know, it's a play on words. It's a fun... Never mind!
Quite a few characters in this one, and they are brilliant. Side characters, main characters, all around, it's a rather solid cast from start to finish. So, with the characters said and done, let's move on to... When it comes to the music of Wreck-It Ralph, it does a great job. Keep in mind that each world Ralph goes to, Fix-It Felix Jr., Hero's Duty, and Sugar Rush, has to carry its own feel and unique tones. For Fix-It Felix Jr., it's using an 8-bit inspired melody. Hero's Duty has a techno horror brought to us by Skrillex. And Sugar Rush has an upbeat and peppy J-pop style. The background music alone is so good in this movie, and the music where Ralph gets the medal is so powerful and triumphant, it deserves an honorable mention. Like Frozen, the background music is real solid, and you could just enjoy it on its own. When it came to writing the script for the review, I just popped on the soundtrack and got to work. My personal favorite song being Wreck-It, Wreck-It Ralph. It's this very upbeat song that actually sums up the narrative for the game Fix-It Felix Jr.
Wreck-It Ralph is a giant of a man, 9 feet tall with really big hands.
Now, Wreck-It Ralph isn't a musical like Frozen was, so I can't really cross-analyze in that regard. However, Wreck-It Ralph does make good use of a montage with the song Shut Up and Drive when Vanellope is learning to master her racing skills. I feel that scenes like this have become a bit more common in Disney movies, as they've used the montage in recent movies like Big Hero 6, but they've used it in past movies like Treasure Planet. I see this as a natural evolution of how Disney conveys musicals. For example, Mulan. They had the song Be a Man. It was performed by a mix of both. It had the traditional Disney method with the character singing the song, but then at some point, it felt like the song took a step back and played in the background, allowing for the animation and narrative to carry the rest of the picture.
Let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. Did they send me daughters? I asked for sons.
I personally think Disney should make more use of songs in this manner. While there's nothing wrong with a good musical, and it's not like I need to love every song that Disney musicals use, I do think that substance needs to be put forward for the narrative over flash of visual and melody. When it comes to Frozen songs, they feel so abrupt that I can honestly say that the Cat in the Hat's one line of dialogue from that god-awful Mike Myers movie sums up the musicals for Frozen.
We even managed to work in an up-tempo pop tune for the soundtrack. That's important.
Now, when it comes to visuals, back during my Frozen review, I had said that while Frozen looks nice, it didn't have me saying, whoa, that's a Disney movie. But with Wreck-It Ralph, it had me saying whoa repeatedly throughout the course of the film. The movie takes place over multiple unique worlds, so each location needs its own atmosphere. First up, Fix-It Felix Jr., a clear homage to the old school Donkey Kong title that the game has an 80s feel and does a masterful job of incorporating design elements of a simple penthouse amongst a wonderful park. Ralph especially is unique in design as he manages to keep a blocky physique to stay with his 80s aesthetic of his arcade game. It's fascinating how the designers went through so many different ideas, including trolls, monsters, ogres, cavemen, a Sasquatch, a gorilla, and even a bulldozer when coming up with Ralph's design. At one time, Ralph even looked like this. Now, opposite to Ralph is Felix. Obviously a construction worker look. Felix isn't designed to be rugged, he's designed to be softer feeling and approach. That's why he's made up of mostly circles. He's got a thinner frame, making him a foil to Ralph, who sort of comes off as a anthropomorphic brick. Unlike Ralph, who went through a variety of designs, Felix was always human from the get-go, which made sense, he's an homage to Mario after all. Though one of his designs comes off like something out of a creepypasta. He looks like if Slender Man was working a job as a milkman. Then there's this creepy one of him as a ruler. As for the supporting cast, the Nicelanders, they look cool. While they all share the same very stock figure, each member looks unique and has their own design. To me, the best piece of work in this world is the animation. While Ralph and Felix are more fluid, the Nicelanders have this great choppiness to their animation. Remember, they're meant to be 8-bit characters, so they have limited animation that reflects that in their movement and expression. There's also the attention to detail, such as when Ralph smashes the cake and it splatters and all the splats are 8-bit blocks. That is just a small detail, and while we're visiting this 3D marvel of a landscape, it doesn't let you forget that the world you're in is actually an 8-bit world. Next up is Hero's Duty, and this world is described simply as hostile. A modern-day first-person shooter, the game is clearly inspired by the likes of Gears of War, Halo, and Mass Effect. It's futuristic and monstrous with a chaotic, violent feel that is accompanied by washed-out colors in its setting. It's a world that feels desolate and void of hope, almost like Batman vs. Superman. Character-wise, we got action heroes where the majority are a bunch of just meatheads built for shooting cybugs. Now, the only female we have is Calhoun, who forgoes the typical Disney standard of traditional beauty of being thin and dainty, and instead goes for a cut athlete build with a military edge. Calhoun seems to mostly stay the same with her designs throughout production, so there's nothing to really report on that. She always sort of just has a badass space marine look made to embody the modern sensibility of shooter titles. But now, the monsters in her world, the cybugs, oh, that is something special. That is a special kind of nightmare. They are a perfect blend of cute and killer all in one. Get this, it's a cybernetic insect that whatever they eat, they assimilate into their body. This makes them a monstrosity that is simply terrifying, and it gets even better when they invade Sugar Rush. We see how creative the artists get with these designs, and while the bugs share the same body, they each have a unique design that makes them stand out. It shows real creativity and not a sense of laziness or a rush job, as if the movie might have spent too many years in development hell, so they just had to be quick and cut corners. Finally, we got Sugar Rush itself, which is clearly the love child of Mario Kart and Candyland. The best way to describe this world is diabetic because everything looks so sweet. The technical level here amazes me. I'm the son of a baker, so I understand how this stuff works, stuff like frosting and how it's supposed to fold and look. And it looks really good here. It doesn't look like it's fake. Character-wise, everyone here actually looks more anime-inspired, having large heads and big eyes. Even background characters have this sort of kawaii feeling of Japanese candy package design to them. As for our lead lady, Vanellope's design looks great. A mix of grubby and yet vulnerable with a tomboy touch to her overall design. And it's funny how her design got weird at some point in production. What the crap? She looks like some sort of radioactive fucking character from Dr. Seuss. She looks like some kind of weird radioactive Who. I feel like her final design is actually perfect. It's cute, yet tough. Not too much to say on King Candy. I like the design, clearly paying homage to the Mad Hatter from the animated Alice in Wonderland movie, though honestly, I just like how non-threatening he looks. As Turbo, he sort of looks like a cross between a crash test dummy meets a zombie, but he doesn't stay in that appearance all that much. Then there are the other Sugar Rush racers who are much like Vanellope with the same basic build, but each a unique and different design. Each one of course being developed with some semblance of a snack in mind. They all look solid, not too many really standing out, though I got this one hang up I can't get over.
Francis Blugger Butter!
The crap kind of name is that? Rancis? What, like rancid? Oh yeah, that's appetizing. And Flugger Butter? Sounds like some sort of sex aid.
Oh, Margaret, get the Flugger Butter and don't forget to warm up the turkey baster.
So overall, while Frozen was good, it at best met the standard fanfare I expect from a Disney movie. Wreck-It Ralph, on the other hand, surpassed expectation. Each world feels so unique that it feels like there's a story to be told in it. As for the character designs, they all are great. They feel like an extension of their world. In a way, it allows for each character to act as sort of an ambassador to represent their world as they go on these adventures. Simply said, when it comes to Wreck-It Ralph, whoa, now that's a Disney movie. Closing the book on this review, I gotta say Wreck-It Ralph was a surprise. Trailers didn't make it seem all that appealing to me, and I didn't really like the voice actors out of the gate, as I'm not particularly a fan of any of their work, their stand-up, or any of the other projects they've worked on, and the premise alone made it look like it was going to be more of a DreamWorks-style piece. You know the deal by now, right? DreamWorks movies filled with pop culture references so that the movie will quickly be out of date and be more tooth-grinding to watch. Yeah. One day I will get to a DreamWorks movie that I enjoy. Eventually. It's possible. I mean, they can't be making crap forever. You know, it can't all be monsters and aliens and fucking Kung Fu Panda and... Honestly, with Ralph, it felt like a love letter, or better yet, a celebration of being a frickin' gamer. Platformers, first-person shooters, racers. The movie celebrates what gaming has become. Gaming as a whole has moved past this notion of interactive entertainment, and now it's become this culture all on its own. Nowadays, we celebrate gaming in many different ways, be it our Let's Players, or enjoying it with friends, or enjoying it by yourself. Wreck-It Ralph not only does that, but it engages on a narrative level, but also on an emotional level. And to that I gotta say thank you. Thank you, Rich Moore. Thank you to your team. Thank you for understanding what elements there is needed to make a compelling story. And to me, what makes a Disney classic. It's not all about flash. There needs to be substance too. So why couldn't it work for Frozen? Well, there are similarities between the two in idea. I would honestly argue the main enemy here was time, since Frozen spent years in development hell. Now, to be fair, yeah, so did Wreck-It Ralph. Ralph spent 15 years in development hell. Now, admittedly, 15 years is actually a laughable comparison because Frozen spent 70 years in development hell.
70 years.
So really, at that point, there's almost no comparison between it. I suppose Frozen just deteriorated more because they weren't willing to try something different like Ralph. Ralph actually being made nowadays makes a lot more sense because video gaming is so prominent now. It's everywhere. And it actually is so much better now that Ralph came out now instead of 15 years ago because gaming now is like a juggernaut. We've got movies based on video games, we got comics based on video games, we get cartoon shows, we get all sorts of cool stuff because video gaming has grown so dramatically. With Frozen, they wanted to kind of keep to the ideals of how Walt Disney designed his formula for his movies. There's an emphasis on picture and music and less on narrative. It's obsolete by nowadays standards because there's a foregoing of compelling characters and an engaging world. We've evolved the method of storytelling. Disney as a company has evolved the method of storytelling with their movies. Now it's about compelling characters, an amazing world, and getting to really love these individuals as people. And that's just it. To me, with Frozen, they could have had a great picture. By all means, the ingredients are all there. They could have baked us up an amazing story. But it felt like it was being held back. It was clutching to the old ways of the Walt Disney method, which are obsolete now. They just don't work. In reality, the best thing they probably could have done for Frozen is let it go. Hey, you made it to the end. Now how about you hit that like button and share this vid on social media. And of course, for a shameless plug, because we gotta find a way to keep the electricity on somehow, this episode of Nero Reviews has been sponsored by TeePublic. TeePublic is a t-shirt shop where creators can run their own stores, displaying all their own original sweet designs. In our store, for the first 72 hours, with the price cut, you can pick up the Review It Nero shirt. The shirt pays homage to the initial poster release of the hit animated Disney film, Wreck-It Ralph. If you want to support ToonGrin and its future projects, you can click the link in the description box below to be taken to our store to view our selection of original designs and some of the favorites from TeePublic's extensive catalog. Stay safe, stay strong, and thanks for watching.